Hello, tributes, and welcome back to another episode of Ashes of the Hunger Games. I know it's been a while, but it's finally done. This is the 231st to 240th Hunger Games. Now, before I begin, I would like to, of course, give the usual thank yous to Christian Blanco and Lauren McCouch for writing Tales of the Hunger Games and Pen and Reborn, respectively. Without them, this series would not exist. I would also like to thank Andrew McLean for bestowing upon us the art that is occasionally used in these long form episodes. And I just had a hiccup, so yay, love that for me. Anyways, I hope you guys will enjoy this episode of the Hunger Games. Let's get into it. After last year's games, Kimberly made a triumphant return to game making. The 231st Games was planned to be even bigger than even the Quell twist last year. Districts 5 and 6 were picked to send in the extra female tributes, while Districts 2 and 6 were picked to send in the extra male tributes. Here are all of the mentors for the 231st Games. Pause and read at your own discretion. The 231st Games took place in the year 295 in Atlantis. The weather was rainy. The games had no main event. The games lasted for 6 days, and the notable mutts were hungry sharks. This year's victor was 18-year-old Keiko Baxter from District 6. Before the games, Keiko was a very well-known figure within District 6. On the day of the reaping, a lot of fear and tension surrounded the Baxter family. Keiko's youngest sister, Olympia, had just aged into the games, while Keiko was about to age out, witnessing his last year of the reapings. So, when not only him, but 2 of his 5 younger sisters, Olympia, aged 12, and Beverly, aged 15, were reaped, along with Keiko's best friend Logan, aged 18, it was theorized that Keiko was a bad luck boy as the group left the capital. As the tributes were lifted into the arena, Keiko immediately recognized the arena from books he had read as a young boy, books about a lost city, Atlantis. As he looked around, he noticed that sharks swam in the water around them. Keiko would take mental note of the sharks before the gong sounded. When the gong sounded, Keiko ran into the cornucopia with Logan as Olympia and Beverly ran away together. As Keiko and Logan got to the cornucopia, Keiko grabbed a trident, stabbing Plankton from 4 in the heart with it. Meanwhile, Logan grabbed a set of throwing knives and immediately threw one of the knives at Sailor from 4, hitting her in the heart. After killing the 4s, Keiko and Logan met up with their allies from 5, Irani, aged 15, Nebula, aged 17, and Katal, aged 18. As soon as the group united, they heard screams in the distance. Katal commented that the screams sounded familiar, before Keiko and Logan ran towards the screams, immediately recognized who they belonged to. As they got to where they heard the screams, they saw Vita from 2, Scipio from 2, and Scipius from 2 standing over Beverly's dead body. Olympia curled up in the corner scared. As Keiko saw Beverly's body, he snapped. Him, Logan, and Katal ran straight at the trio from 2, while Irani and Nebula ran to save Olympia. The 3 18-year-old boys completely decimated the trio from 2 in a surprisingly smart showing of power, as Keiko, Logan, and Katal encircled the trio from 2, massacring the trio from 2. That night, 13 cannons sounded. These cannons belonged to belonged to both tributes from 1, Vita from 2, Scipio from 2, Scipius from 2, Sailor from 4, Plankton from 4, Beverly from 6, both tributes from 7, the boy from 8, the girl from 9, and the boy from 10. As Arani, Nebula, Olympia, Catal, Keiko, and Logan watched as the fallen tributes were shown in the sky, they were unaware of sharks that were approaching their position. As the fallen tribute showcase was completed, the group sat in silence for a moment until Arani's scream broke the silence. As Keiko, Logan, and Catal looked towards the scream, they didn't see any of the girls. Just then, they saw a puddle of blood forming in the water. After seeing the blood appear, the boys saw a shark fin peeking above the water. Meanwhile, as Olympia and Nebula swam away from sharks that were chasing after them, one of the sharks that was chasing after them caught Olympia, dragging her underwater and tearing her apart. Nebula would also get caught by one of the sharks that was chasing them and also be torn apart. Back with the boys, Catal took out his knife, preparing to defend the camp. Logan also took out his throwing knives, and Keiko took out his trident. As the boys fought the sharks, they actually managed to kill a few, but it wasn't enough, as the sharks got the better of Catal first, taking him underwater and tearing him apart. This would scare Keiko, and he'd run away, while Logan also gets killed by a shark. As the days continued, the number of tributes dwindled quickly. During the course of the days, Keiko had learned how to use the mutts to his advantage. Keiko would learn where the sharks' breeding grounds were, and would use equipment, tools, and weapons to lure tributes to these areas, where they would subsequently get eaten by the sharks. At the end of the 6th day, it was down to the top 4. The top 4 would include USB from 3, Robo from 3, Keiko from 6, and Darien from 10. When it became known to the tributes that they were amongst the top 4, the sharks started swarming the remaining tributes. During the sprint to the cornucopia, the sharks managed to get Darien, who was a favorite for victory. Darien was dragged under the water and disemboweled and eviscerated by the sharks. This death was enough for half the Capitol viewers that year to tune out of the games. Once USB, Robo, and Keiko got to the cornucopia, the trio tried to climb on top of the cornucopia to stay safe from the sharks and battle up there. But, in a show of betrayal, USB kicked Robo off of the cornucopia and into the water, where the sharks promptly killed him. This would leave just USB and Keiko to vie for the crown. As the pair battled, USB managed to kick Keiko's trident out of his hand, now causing both tributes to be unarmed. USB thought this would make things easier for her, as she was trained in karate and taekwondo, but she was wrong. The pair's mentors, 31-year-old Proxima Rust and 26-year-old Ashmore Crowley, would watch the battle intently as USB and Keiko trade blows. The hand-to-hand combat drew attention from many Capitolites who wanted to see who would win this fight. Eventually, Keiko got the upper hand, pushing USB to the ground, starting to choke her out on the edge of the cornucopia roof. Before USB lost consciousness, however, Keiko released USB's throat only to throw her off of the edge of the roof, letting her get killed by the sharks down below. After the games, Keiko would return home to District 6 to the joy of many other District 6 citizens. Although many of these citizens still believed that the Baxter last name was an unlucky one, This would only get worse when Keiko died in District 3 on his victory tour. Unlike other Victor assassinations, Keiko's killer would be caught and subsequently dealt with. Keiko's killer would be revealed to be the little sister of USB and the only other child of their parents. After most of the deaths last year were dealt by arena mutts and not by actual tributes, Kimberly and the other game makers agreed to make the arena mutts less deadly this year in order to test how the games would go with less deadly mutts. This year, Districts 5 and 10 were picked to send in the extra female tributes, and Districts 3 and 11 were picked to send in the extra male tributes. Here are all of the mentors for the 232nd games. Pause and read at your own discretion. The 232nd games took place in the year 296 in Green Plains. The weather was sunny, the main event was a bushfire, the games lasted for 4 days, and the notable mutts were lovely livestock. This year's victor was 17-year-old Cuth Larson of District 5. Cuth was well known in her district for being one of the smartest girls in the district. She had helped to invent a method of generating power through ice, establishing it in the farther north districts. She'd also established massive bioreactors within the district that would have their powers saved to massive backup power generators. This would mean that if the capital were to lose power, they'd have fully powered backup generators within District 5. When the tributes rose into the arena, Cuth looked around to find her allies. She had managed to slink her way into the alliance between the 9s, the 14s, and the 15s this year. Once she finds Bryson from 9 and Raphael from 15, she gives the two younger tributes a reassuring smile. When the gong sounded, Cuth runs into the cornucopia with Briley from 9, Bryson, Blair from 14, Edmund from 14, Marguerite from 15, and Raphael. Cuth then grabs a pair of brass knuckles and uses them to punch Theodore from 1 in the face repeatedly, killing him. After killing Theodore, Cuth then reunites with Briley, Bryson, Blair, Edmund, Marguerite, and Raphael. Her allies had just finished grabbing weapons and killing Oakley from 7, Jackson from 7, and Miguel from 10, scaring the other careers away from the cornucopia for the official anti-career alliance to deal with. This would allow Cuth and her allies to take the cornucopia. As the days continued, Cuth and her allies stayed in the cornucopia, keeping guard of the materials. It became known to the group on the second night that the rest of the careers were killed during the second day. These careers would include Emmy from 1, Rune from 2, Mason from 2, Oceania from 4, River from 4, Relia from 10, Maria from 10, Mitochondria from 12, and Colton from 12. By the end of the third day, there were still 10 tributes remaining. These 10 tributes were Bit from 3, Cuth from 5, Amazonia from 6, Gauze from 8, Briley from 9, Bryson from 9, Blair from 14, Edmund from 14, Marguerite from 15, and Raphael from 15. Cuth would realize that her allies were the only ones with all tributes from their districts still alive. Cuth didn't want to betray her allies, but she also didn't want to be the last person to betray the alliance, because in her mind, anyone who wasn't first to betray their allies was dead. On the third night, on Cuth's watch, she made her plan and put it into action. She'd kill the strongest members of the alliance first, before killing the weaker ones. She'd start her systematic killings with both tributes from 9 and the girl from 15. As Bryson, Briley, and Marguerite slept, Cuth found it relatively easy to kill all three of them. She'd then sneak over to Edmund and punch him repeatedly until his cannon sounds. She'd do this to Raphael next, leaving her and Blair in the alliance. As Cuth stood up from the dead body of Raphael, she'd notice that Blair had already woken up and was running towards the water source the Alliance had found on the second day. Cuth would run at Blair, blood from her deceased allies all over her hands. As Blair reached the water, she turned towards Cuth with tears in her eyes. Blair would beg Cuth to spare her, but Cuth would simply say that if she spares Blair's life, Blair would only use that against her later. Cuth would then grab Blair by the hair and force Blair's head under the water. Blair would kick and thrash about under the water, not going out without a fight. She'd surprisingly land a few kicks into Cuth's side, but Cuth wouldn't let up until Blair's cannon sounded. This betrayal would leave just Bit from 3, Cuth from 5, Amazonia from 6, and Gauze from 8. An announcement would be made by the game makers that the grand final would be held the next day, and that they'd recommend getting some rest beforehand so that the tributes were all rested and fired up for the fight. As the other tributes rested around the arena, Cuth finally left the cornucopia area in order to search for the other remaining tributes. As she searched, she eventually came across the camp of Amazonia and Gauze. Amazonia and Gauze had chosen to break away from the anti-careers together after the Alliance had massacred the Career Alliance. As Cuth came across their camp, she also noticed that they too found a water source. Cuth would smirk at this and grab Gauze by the arm, dragging him over to the water's edge, drowning Gauze in the water. Gauze's cannon would wake Amazonia. Cuth would look up from Gauze's dead body floating in the water, seeing Amazonia running away in the direction of the cornucopia. Cuth would quickly get up and run after Amazonia. As the Horn of Plenty played and the fallen tributes shone in the sky, Cuth and Amazonia made it back to the cornucopia, only for Bit to throw a spear into Amazonia's head, sounding her cannon. When Cuth saw Bit throw the spear into Amazonia's head, Cuth got mad, not because Bit had made it to the cornucopia while she was gone, but because Bit had stolen her kill. Cuth would then run at the now seemingly unarmed Bit, but as Cuth got close enough, Bit revealed a knife before stabbing it into Cuth's arm, twisting it and cutting down Cuth's bicep. Cuth would scream out in pain as Bit takes the blade out of Cuth's arm. Cuth is now bleeding heavily, but she's not giving up. Cuth would kick the knife out of Bit's hands before kicking Bit in the face, causing her to fall to the ground. Cuth then picked Bit up by the hair and dragged her to the water. Cuth would then torture Bit by repeatedly dunking her head into the water, picking her head back up, and then dunking her head back under the water. She'd do this repeatedly until Bit's cannon sounded, marking Cuth as this year's victor. After the games, Cuth would be taken to the hospital due to the wound in her arm. Cuth would be there for multiple months. Towards the middle of her stay, the arm would get infected. The arm wound would get infected, causing the capital doctors to amputate the limb. Cuth's right arm would be amputated up to her shoulder. Cuth would return home to District 5 after his stay in the hospital, where she wasn't well liked within the district, mainly due to her having betrayed her allies. The hatred in her home district would eventually lead her to move to the capital. In the capital, Cuth would join a band with 3 future victors as the drummer after getting a prosthetic arm. Cuth would eventually meet the love of her life during a performance, Acrisius. Cuth and Acrisius would go on to have 5 kids together, 3 boys and 2 girls. They'd also go on to adopt 5 cats and 2 dogs together, along with many other family animals that aren't documented well within the files. Cuth would be the female tribute mentor until the male mentor, Freyr Clark, would die during the 234th Hunger Games. Cuth would take over the male tribute mentor role, while her mentor, Estrella Adams, victor of the 220th Hunger Games, would come back to take over mentoring the female District 5 tributes. The 233rd Games took place in the year 297. After last year's games, the game makers agreed that the more dangerous mutts and arena events were what made the games more interesting. So, it was decided that this year's arena event and mutts would be more dangerous to certain tributes. This year, Districts 1 and 7 were picked to send in the extra female tributes, and Districts 10 and 12 were picked to send in the extra male tributes. Here are all of the mentors for the 233rd Hunger Games. Pause and read at your own discretion. The 233rd Hunger Games took place at a water park. The weather was sunny, the main event was a flood, the games lasted for 9 hours, and the notable mutts were dangerous dolphins. This year's victor was 18-year-old Lisbeth Diggs from District 12. Lisbeth wasn't very well known within her district, but one thing was well known about her was that she didn't get along well with anyone. When she became the female tribute for District 12 this year, she already had a game plan. During training, she'd learn everything she could from each tribute, from each district, without forming an official alliance with any of them. When the tributes were lifted into the arena, Lisbeth had learned how to use pickaxes more effectively from the District 1 tributes. She had learned how to use blades more effectively from the District 2 tributes. She had learned how to rewire bombs from the District 3 tributes. She had learned how to swim and use tridents from the District 4 tributes. She had learned how to rewire electric motors from the tributes from Districts 5 and 6. She had learned how to properly use a throwing axe from the tributes from District 7. She had learned how to smother with textiles from the District 8 tributes. Finally, she had learned how to use sickles and scythes from the tributes from Districts 9, 10, 11, 14, and 15. Many tributes in the arena thought that Lisbeth was officially allied with them, so when she killed Antoine from 15 in the bloodbath, everyone was surprised. As the careers killed more tributes in the bloodbath, Lisbeth ran away from the cornucopia with the arena's only trident. 9 hours into the games, the game makers triggered a flood within the arena. This event was supposed to just narrow down the competition, but a miscalculation occurred with the intensity of the event, causing it to flood the arena many feet deep, causing many tributes to drown within the currents. This water would never go away. The only 5 tributes to make it out of this event were Manta from 4, Hudson from 4, Lisbeth from 12, Yolanda from 14, and Linlithgow from 14. Manta and Hudson were in an alliance with Yolanda, and Linlithgow were in an alliance of their own. As the top 5 were forced to swim to the roof of the cornucopia, peaking above the water, the 4s and 14s made it there first and began fighting. The 4 tributes had forgotten that Lisbeth was still alive, and so they thought they were actually in the top 4. Once the fighting subsided, Yolanda had made it out on top. She would put her hands up, declaring herself the victor, until Lisbeth snuck up behind her and stabbed Yolanda in the back with the trident. Lisbeth would then lift Yolanda off of the ground with her trident, still stabbed into Yolanda's back. Yolanda would cry and scream in pain as she slowly slid down the trident. Lisbeth would stand the trident up vertically in a hole in the top of the cornucopia, meant for a flagpole. She then pushed Yolanda down on the trident completely, impaling Yolanda on the trident and killing her. After the games, no one in Pan Am liked her, especially not the capital. The capital didn't like any form of disloyalty amongst the careers, thinking that would be a good space for rebellion. Although, since she was a victor from a career district, the capital didn't do anything about it. Lisbeth would go on to not find many suitors amongst Pan Am citizens, considering that none of them really liked her. Lisbeth would end up adopting one child, a boy named Sorrow Summers, who would have won another games sometime before he was adopted by Lisbeth. The 234th Games took place in the year 298. After last year, the capital was hoping for more strong tributes. They'd even bring back the brass knuckles as a more permanent form of weaponry. Districts 14 and 15 would be picked to send in the extra female tributes, and Districts 11 and 12 would be picked to send in the extra male tributes this year. Here are the mentors for the 234th Games. Pause and read at your own discretion. The 234th Games took place in a garden. The weather was sunny, the main event was a wildfire, the games lasted for 9 days, and the notable mutts were beautiful butterflies. This year's victor was 16-year-old Evangeline Angstrom from District 1. Evangeline wasn't well known amongst her District 1 comrades, but she does still have some admirers in the district due to her beauty. When she became the female tribute for District 1, the District 1 citizens were curious about her plans in the arena. This curiosity would only grow as Evangeline declined joining the Career Alliance. As the tributes rose into the arena, an announcement began. This announcement mentioned how cheating to give a tribute an advantage in the games is strictly prohibited. None of the tributes would understand what this meant until screens above the cornucopia would show security footage of Malachi from 2 and Catherine from 15 poisoning their respective district partners before the games. Minnie from 2, Florence from 15, and Juliet from 15 had died from this poisoning, taking out strong members of the competition. Malachi and Catherine thought this would make things easier for them, but as the videos were coming to an end, Malachi and Catherine's trackers would be detonated, killing them too. These explosions would also kill the nearby tributes of Cash from 1, Techie from 3, and Dominic from 11. Meanwhile, still before the gong sounded, the tributes from Districts 5, 6, and 8 agreed that the other tributes in the arena looked too big and threatening. They had tried to join the Anti-Career Alliance, but with no weaponry experience or knowledge in basic survival instincts, these tributes weren't accepted into the Anti-Career Alliance. This caused the 6 tributes to agree to step off of their podiums before the horn sounded. This would cause the 6 tributes to get blown sky high before the gong finally sounded. When the gong finally sounded, Evangeline ran into the cornucopia and grabbed a sword and a tin of paint available in the cornucopia. She'd only end up killing Charlotte from 14, who was in her way of her escaping from the cornucopia. As the games continued, not much happened on the second day, other than Evangeline being sponsored more paint. Capitolites seeing a plan forming in Evangeline's mind by this point. Evangeline would end up using the paint to camouflage herself with the many colorful flowers of the arena, laying on the ground and waiting for tributes to pass by. She'd kill Michael from 3, River from 4, Burchett from 7, and Riker from 9 in this way. As the days continued, Evangeline would be the only tribute to bring death to the games, although even she is just hiding and killing only when tributes get near to her. Some Capitolites thought this year would be a boring year, but they would be proven wrong soon. During the 8th day, a wildfire is triggered on the edges of the arena, working its way inward. Evangeline was the first to notice that. Although there were still 10 tributes remaining, the game makers were trying to get all the remaining tributes to fight at the cornucopia. When Evangeline makes it back to the cornucopia, she witnesses the remaining careers kill off the 11s before turning on each other. Evangeline would watch this fight very intently, wondering who she'd have to face after it. In a moment reminiscent of the 183rd Hunger Games, Junipero from 7, Juana from 10, Jason from 10, Hope from 12, and Manus from 12 teamed up, taking down Atlanta from 4. The group would then fight each other. As this fight was occurring between the remaining careers, Evangeline had completely forgotten about Cora from 9. As Evangeline watched the fight, Cora slowly snuck up behind her. As Evangeline watched the fight, her attention was torn away when she felt a cold metallic piercing in her left leg. She lets out a piercing scream as she instinctively turns her head to see Cora there. Instead of taking the knife out of Evangeline's leg, Cora flinched and jumped back, releasing the knife. Evangeline would then grab her sword and slice it through the air, hitting Cora in the side of her neck, sounding her cannon. As Evangeline turned back to the direction of the fight, she was just in time to see nothing. She only saw the dead bodies of 8 tributes, meaning it was down to Evangeline and 1 other tribute. Although Evangeline didn't know which of the careers survived, or even where they were, she was about to find out. As soon enough, Juana jumps out from the bushes nearby to the gap Evangeline was peeking from, nearly scaring Evangeline to death right there. Evangeline would get up with a limp due to the knife in her leg, still carved deep inside her left calf. Juana would laugh at this, stating that she should be an easy win for her. That this should be an easy win for her. The girls would begin fighting, both girls dealing devastating blows until Juana gets the upper hand. She pins Evangeline down in a chokehold and starts to monologue. Before Juana can finish, though, Evangeline finally takes the knife out of her leg, screaming in pain before stabbing Juana in the side of the head, sounding Juana's cannon and making Evangeline and marking Evangeline's victory. Evangeline would lose consciousness as her victory was announced. After the games, Evangeline would be taken to the hospital within the capital to be checked on. The wound in her leg had already started to be infected, and in order to save it, they would need to amputate Evangeline's left leg. After surgery, it would take Evangeline a full month to recover. Once Evangeline fully recovered, she stayed in the capital, also joining the Victor Therapy group. Within the Victor Therapy group, she'd make friends with previous Victors, becoming especially close with next year's Victor. The pair would start dating during the 240th games, although it isn't written whether they got married and adopted kids or not. The 235th games took place in the year 299. For the 235th Hunger Games, as this was the 32nd quinquennial quell, President Belladonna Caliban made a live appearance on Capitol TV. After applause in the newly renamed Caliban Square, President Caliban bowed and announced that in order to remind the rebels that even twins turned on each other during the rebellions in years past, this year's tributes would be reaped from pairs of twins, and their twin must join them. This year's victor and her twin sister were notably the nieces of past victor Mateo Gutierrez, victor of the 208th Hunger Games, being the daughter of Mateo's older brother Romano. Here are the mentors for the 235th Hunger Games. Pause and read at your own discretion. The 235th Games took place in a carnivorous island. The weather was rainy. The main event was The Island Eats. The games lasted for 3 days, and the notable mutts were carnivorous squirrels. This year's victor was 17-year-old Cheyenne Gutierrez from District 10. Cheyenne and her twin sister Julianne were well known within District 10 for being related to Mateo Gutierrez, one of District 10's current mentors. The pair would have amazing training because of this, being trained in the training academy and at home by their uncle. In training, it's noted that Cheyenne didn't form super strong attachments to her allies. As the tributes rose into the arena, many tributes were captivated by the beauty of the arena. Meanwhile, Cheyenne and the other careers were staring directly into the cornucopia. The Career Alliance this year would consist of Dollar Malone from 1, Cash Malone from 1, Ecstasy Richland from 1, Chastity Richland from 1, Marius Dalton from 2, Manias Dalton from 2, Techno Latier from 3, Pixel Bite from 3, Eric Del Sol from 4, Harold Del Sol from 4, Asgard O'Dare from 4, Valhalla O'Dare from 4, Juniper Jordan from 7, Junipero Jordan from 7, Willow Barbosa from 7, Palma Barbosa from 7, Julio Alvarez from 10, Juliano Alvarez from 10, Cheyenne Gutierrez from 10, Julianne Gutierrez from 10, Barton Everdeen from 12, Benefico Everdeen from 12, Amaryl Colson from 12, and Amethea Colson from 12. When the gong sounded, the careers ran in and grabbed weapons. Cheyenne would grab an axe and immediately use it to kill Vitelia from 2 and Venus from 2, and one fatal swing of her axe. After also killing the boy from 11 and the boys from 15, Cheyenne would reunite with the other careers who had just finished off the girls from 11 and the girl from 15. meaning that districts 11 and 15 were the first districts this year to lose all of their tributes. Due to the career's distraction with the other tributes, some tributes actually managed to get away with supplies from the cornucopia this year, which Cheyenne and the other careers weren't happy about. While the 13-year-olds from 3 worked on digging up and rewiring the bombs around the podiums, Cheyenne and Julianne led a meeting with the other careers about what they would do about the missing supplies. Although there were many tributes related to victors in the career alliance this year, Cheyenne and Julianne quickly surged to positions of leadership this year. Although the Daltons could have easily also been the leaders, they gave up their leadership positions to the Gutierrez twins. As Ecstasy complained to Julianne and Manius that there were no more throwing knives left at the cornucopia, Cheyenne actually breaks away from the meeting, trying to come up with her own plan for the games. Techno and Pixel would notice Cheyenne break away, and the pair would slowly approach her. Techno and Pixel were the only tributes this year that Cheyenne let herself get close with. So, when the pair asked Cheyenne what she was doing, Cheyenne immediately answered honestly, stating that the other careers were stressing her out. Techno and Pixel would actually catch on to an ulterior motive from Cheyenne, but they wouldn't tell Cheyenne. In fact, Techno and Pixel first turned to the other careers. When Techno and Pixel came to the careers during the third day, instead of believing the threes, the other careers turned on them, thinking that the threes were just trying to get rid of Cheyenne so they could take the lead. Cheyenne would be out hunting with Cash at this time, so the other careers would turn on the threes, killing Techno and Pixel in what they thought was defense of Cheyenne and the Alliance. When Cheyenne and Cash got back, Cheyenne saw Techno and Pixel's dead bodies. By this point in the games, the careers had already noticed that they weren't removing the dead bodies in the arena in order to traumatize the tributes, especially if their twin was dead. Cheyenne would run to Techno and Pixel's dead bodies and cradle the pair in her arms. She'd ask the careers who did this. Cash even looked surprised, as he too didn't know what had happened before. The other careers would reply with what they thought was the truth, but many Capital historians noted that this was the point that something shifted within Cheyenne. During the night, Cheyenne would take first watch, like the past 2 nights. Once all the other careers were asleep, she struck first and struck hard. Much like Cuth a couple years prior, she'd kill the strongest careers first, starting with the Daltons and her own twin sister. As Cheyenne worked her way down the list, she was down to the last 2 when one of them woke up. The last 2 careers left were Cash and Ecstasy. Ecstasy would be the one to wake up. When Ecstasy saw Cheyenne slit the throat of Cash, Ecstasy glared at Cheyenne, stating that Techno and Pixel were right. Cheyenne would just smirk and nod, revealing a throwing knife she had taken herself from the cornucopia, asking Ecstasy if she missed her throwing knives, in reference to Ecstasy's complaining about there being no more throwing knives in the cornucopia on day 1. As Ecstasy ran at Cheyenne, all Cheyenne had to do was throw the throwing knife, which she did. The throwing knife soared through the air until it hit its target, hitting Ecstasy right in the heart, sounding her cannon. After killing all the careers, there were still 23 tributes, including Cheyenne, remaining. But Cheyenne wasn't done. Over the next few hours, Cheyenne would hunt down and kill every remaining tribute, finding it semi-difficult to find her last opponent, Bryler, from 9. At midnight, Cheyenne decided she'd return to the cornucopia and wait for Bryler to find her. But when she arrived at the cornucopia, Bryler was already there, waiting for her. When Bryler saw all the blood on Cheyenne's arena outfit from the 42 tributes she had just finished killing, including the 21 careers and the 21 tributes she had killed in the games down to just her and Bryler, Bryler looked scared. Cheyenne would smirk at Bryler's scared face, wondering if this was truly her last opponent. Cheyenne prepared one of her throwing knives, telling Bryler that she was surprised he made it this far. During training, Cheyenne had seen Bryler as a weakling, incapable of making it far in the games, but now he was the last tribute standing in between her and victory. Cheyenne would ask Bryler about his twin sister Riley, knowing full well that she herself had killed her a few hours prior. This would make Bryler's eye twitch. Bryler would then run at Cheyenne, unknowingly sealing his fate as Cheyenne threw the throwing knife, hitting Bryler in the head and sounding his cannon. After the games, Cheyenne was taken to the capital, where she'd be put in the same insane asylum that Honolulu was in. Although, due to being a capital favorite, Cheyenne was allowed out once every year to mentor the District 10 female tributes. Cheyenne would eventually be let out, as her mentality and sanity had gotten better during the 238th Hunger Games. Cheyenne would immediately join the Victor Therapy Group as a rule set forth by her parole officer. It was there that Cheyenne would meet Evangeline Angstrom, victor of the 234th Hunger Games. Evangeline would be the first person Cheyenne actually confided with since before she was raped. Evangeline would remind Cheyenne a lot of one of her exes, Tijuana Palmer. Tijuana and Cheyenne had ended things on good terms, just having grown apart. Due to this reminder of her ex, Cheyenne found it easy to talk to Evangeline. The pair would end up falling head over heels for each other during the 239th Hunger Games, and they'd officially start dating during the 240th Hunger Games. It is unknown in the files what happened after this, if the pair got married, if they broke up, if they adopted children together, or if they decided to adopt pets instead. Not much is known about their relationship other than the fact that it existed. The 236 games took place in the year 300. This year's games would come to be known for its super surprising victor, especially due to the fact that this year's arena was ripe for a District 1 victor. This year, Districts 9 and 14 would be picked to send in the extra female tributes, and Districts 3 and 15 would be picked to send in the extra male tributes. Here are all of the mentors for the 236th Hunger Games. Pause and read at your own discretion. This year's games took place in a selenite mine. There was no weather. The main event was a mine collapse. The games lasted for 4 days, and the notable mutts were enraged bats. This year's victor was 18-year-old Cornelia Misson from District 9. Cornelia was well known throughout District 9 for her gorgeous looks and her more innocent country girl style. When she was reaped, viewers in the capital and even tributes watching the reapings in the future would laugh at this, thinking that Cornelia wouldn't be a very big threat in the arena. The only exception to this were the Tens, who remembered how close Cheyenne came to losing due to a District 9 boy who was thought to not be that big a threat. When the tributes rose into the arena, Cornelia immediately recognized that this arena was designed for District 1. The caves and giant crystals within the cave were a dead giveaway. Before the gong sounded, Cornelia looked to her left to find Diamond from 1 smirking at Cornelia. She'd then look to her right to find Argentite from 1 also smirking at her. Cornelia immediately recognized that the capital probably did this on purpose, but those in her home districts that knew her knew she was fast. She definitely used this to her advantage as the gong sounded. As the gong sounded, Cornelia immediately broke into a sprint straight for the cornucopia, surprising many tributes. When Cornelia got to the cornucopia, she grabbed a pickaxe, immediately stabbing Diamond in the brain with it. As more outliers took Cornelia's lead, grabbing weapons from the cornucopia and killing at least one career tribute before running away, Cornelia enters an intense stare-down with Argentite. As the pair stared each other down, Scout from 9 snuck up behind Argentite before Alentia from 2 could warn Argentite. Scout slit Argentite's throat before Alentia's throat was slit by Zion from 6 before Zion ran away. Cornelia and Scout would stare each other down for a moment, not sure of what the other person would do, considering they had never formed an official alliance. After a little while, though, Cornet from 9 met up with the pair and dragged Scout away from the cornucopia. This would cause Cornelia to run the other way, not wanting to confront her district partners. After the bloodbath, only 4 career tributes remained. These 4 careers were Silas from 4, Sap from 7, Vera from 10, and Pico from 10, who were the only careers to not trust the innocent looks of the outliers this year, and not consider the outliers easy kills. On her own, Cornelia brought laughs to the capital by telling jokes directed towards the nearby cameras. Although she and Scout had killed the ones, Cornelia and Scout were now the favorites for victory due to their weaponry expertise and strategies. As the games go on, Cornelia stays to herself, only killing in self-defense with her pickaxe. On the dawn of the 4th day, the games were down to the top 7. Alexa from 3, Silas from 4, Sap from 7, Cornelia from 9, Scout from 9, Vera from 10, and Pico from 10. As most of the remaining tributes were careers, Cornelia decided she'd try to find Scout and Alexa and form a truce with them in order to take down the careers. As she was doing this, however, she started to hear loud thuds nearby. Eventually, what was happening would come within Cornelia's line of sight. The cave was collapsing. Cornelia would begin running towards the cornucopia, hoping she'd see Scout there at least. As she runs to the cornucopia, she hears cannons going off in the distance as the cave collapse kills off tributes. This would make Cornelia run faster, seriously hoping Scout would be there to face against the careers together. As Cornelia arrived at the cornucopia, though, she would only see Sap, the career girl from 7. This would scare Cornelia, as Sap would laugh and wonder, much like Cheyenne last year, if this was truly her competition within the final. Cornelia would take a deep breath, preparing her pickaxe in order to fight Sap. This would only make Sap laugh harder, stating that the 1s and 12s would be better with pickaxes and that Cornelia would be the easiest fight she'd ever be a part of. Sap's comments would piss Cornelia off. Cornelia would then run directly at Sap. Sap would grab her throwing axe and throw it directly into Cornelia's stomach, causing Cornelia to collapse to the ground, clutching her stomach in pain. As all hope seemed lost and Cornelia was about to lose consciousness, Scout came into the cornucopia clearing and threw his dagger at Sap as Sap threw her axe at Scout. Both weapons hit their intended targets. Sap's axe hit Scout in the heart, while Scout's dagger hit Sap in the head, sounding both of their cannons simultaneously and marking Cornelia's victory. After the games, Cornelia returned home to District 9, where she'd go on to adopt 6 cats, naming one after Scout. It was revealed a little later after her games that she and Scout had dated before being reaped, although they always broke things off the day before reaping day, just in case one of them was reaped and didn't make it home. After a few years, Cornelia did get over Scout, finding love with a sweet southern boy named Centeno. Cornelia and Centeno would go on to get married, although they wouldn't have biological children of their own, seeing as Cornelia's injuries sustained in the arena left her infertile. The pair would still love each other, even if they couldn't have biological heirs. They'd still adopt. The pair would adopt 10 children together, 5 girls and 5 boys. None of these children would end up competing in future games. The 5 boys would end up forming a band, performing whenever they'd visit the capital with their mother. The 237th games took place in the year 301. This year, there would be 3 birthdays in the arena: the victor, his district partner, and the girl from 15. This would notably be the first time in the Ashes files where a victor's birthday was in the arena. The Ashes files have had tributes' birthdays in the arena before, but never the birthday of a victor. This year, Districts 1 and 6 were picked from both bowls, meaning Districts 1 and 6 would send in extra tributes of both genders. Here are the mentors for the 237th games. Pause and read at your own discretion. I do want to say, this games and another games that I wrote, I'm pretty sure it was the 239th games, their victors have birthdays in the arena. So the age that I write in the victory is the age that they were when they won. Okay? So, like, not the age that they were reaped at, but the age that they won at. So, for instance, this victor, it's written that he's 14. He won at 14. He was reaped at 13 and turned 14 in the arena. That's what it is. So anyways, let's just get into the 237th games. This year's games took place in a sewer. There was no weather. The main event was a flood. The games lasted for 3 days, and the noblements were agitated alligators. This year's victor was 14-year-old Hermes Bocelli from District 1. Hermes was surprisingly not very well known within District 1. The only thing known about him by other District 1 citizens was that if he were to be reaped this year, his 14th birthday would occur in the arena. More specifically, Hermes' birthday would be during the first day in the arena. When the tributes rose into the arena, Hermes looked around to try to find his allies, Aphrodite from 1 and Anne-Marie from 15. When he finds them, he gives Anne-Marie a reassuring smile, knowing Anne-Marie was probably terrified. Not only was Anne-Marie from an outlier district, but she was also turning 13 this year, being the youngest in the alliance. When the gong sounds, Hermes ran into the cornucopia, grabbing a knife and immediately stabbing Hercules from 2 in the heart with it. He'd then turn to find his allies again. As he finds his allies, he witnesses Anne-Marie getting killed by Emerald from 1, and Aphrodite being killed by Athena from 2. This would leave Hermes all alone. As Diamante from 1 sees Hermes, Hermes would have no choice but to run away and hide. As Hermes ran, he'd trip and fall into the water. He'd almost throw up due to the smell, but he'd end up deciding to stay there, thinking that no sane tribute would hide here, or even walk through here. As the days went on, Hermes would only come up out of the water to kill unsuspecting tributes and take breaths. He'd kill Chop from 7, Quill from 8, Quinn from 8, Popper from 9, Poppy from 11, and Prim from 12 in this way. On the dawn of the third day, it was down to the top 5 already. The top 5 consisted of Hermes from 1, Athena from 2, Arabia from 6, Corellia from 6, and Fars from 6. As Hermes realized this, the currents started to get stronger where he was. He'd come up out of the water just in time to see a massive wave of sewage water rushing at him. He'd take a deep breath, holding his breath before the water hits him. As Hermes is washed towards the cornucopia, the Sixes and Athena are being chased by hungry alligators in different areas. Of course, the Sixes and Athena would make it to the cornucopia first, the alligators turning away to go and find Hermes instead. As Hermes is being pushed by the wave, he'd lose air fast. As he gets washed up on the shore of the cornucopia, he is almost unconscious. Even though he's still semi-conscious, he is able to watch the fight between the Sixes and Athena. As Arabia and Fars die to Athena, and it looks like Corellia was about to meet the same fate, a barely conscious Hermes threw his knife into Athena's back, sounding her cannon. As Athena falls to the ground, Corellia looks at Hermes and approaches him. Hermes would tell Corellia to finish him off. He'd say that District 6 deserves another female victor. He'd then go on to say that he's not well known in his district anyways, and that no one would miss him. Corellia would shake her head, stating that she had volunteered for the games in order to be killed. She didn't want to live in a world where children killing other children was seen as entertainment. Hermes would comment that in getting killed, she was turning into the very thing she didn't want to be, the killed entertainment. A moment of silence followed before being broken again. Corellia would mention that it was already too late for her and that killing her would be a mercy kill at this point, dropping the bombshell that she's sick, the deadly kind. She mentions she has a childhood cancer, having been affected since she was a little kid. Hermes didn't want to kill Corellia, at least not without good reason. It seems like what she was saying about an incurable sickness she had was the good reason he needed. Hermes would nod and slowly stand up with what little energy he had left. He'd then muster the rest of his strength he had to throw his knife into Corellia's heart, sounding a cannon. Hermes would then immediately pass out as his victory was announced. After the games, Hermes would be taken to the hospital in order to be checked on and possibly resuscitated if needed. After a few months to a year, Hermes recovered fully from the near drowning he had experienced in the arena. Hermes would stay in the capital, joining the Victor Therapy Group, getting help by many different victors. He'd eventually meet Cuth and a few other future victors, forming a band with them. He would be the bassist for the band, getting many girls fawning over him. He'd eventually settle down and have a family, although it isn't written who he did this with in the files. The 238th Games took place in the year 302. This year would come to be known as the first time since the 74th and 75th Hunger Games where a mentor became super close with a tribute, although this closeness would result in the victor being adopted by one of his mentors immediately after his victory. This year, Districts 2 and 12 were picked to send in the extra female tributes, and Districts 12 and 15 were picked to send in the extra male tributes. This year's games would also notably be held during the winter months, as this year's arena was an amusement park that was actually open to the public during the spring, summer, and fall months, meaning that the amusement park was only able to be used during the winter. Many tributes would be able to handle the cold, considering they were from districts in the mountains like Districts 1, 2, 5, and 12, or they're from districts in the north like Districts 6, 7, 14, 15, and the northern reaches of District 9. Here are all of the mentors for the 238th Games. Pause and read at your own discretion. This year's games took place in an amusement park. The weather was sunny, the main event was a ride collapse, the games lasted for 3 days, and notable mutts were rabies-riddled squirrels. This year's victor was 17-year-old Sorrow Summers from District 12. Sorrow is an orphan, to put it simply. His mother had died during childbirth, and his father had died in a car accident, leaving Sorrow alone in an orphanage. As the days before the games went on, he'd get close with the female mentor of District 12, Lisbeth Diggs, resulting in Lisbeth making a promise to adopt him if he made it out of the arena, which would make Sorrow happy. When the tributes rose into the arena, Sorrow looked around, seeing Ophelia from 2 to his left. Ophelia would give Sorrow a small, shy smile. Sorrow would chuckle at this and smile back at Ophelia, waving at her. It was clear, since they first met during training, that Ophelia had developed feelings for him. It wasn't Sorrow's first experience with girls liking him, but this is the first experience that a girl who liked him treated everyone else terribly while holding Sorrow on a pedestal. When the gong sounded, Sorrow ran into the cornucopia. He'd grab a pickaxe and swing it into the side of Ajax from 2's head. He'd then tackle Ruby from 1 to the ground, almost finishing the job when Sydney Apricot from 12 tackled him off of Ruby. As Corey Auburn from 12 and Sally Mahogany from 12 met up with Sydney Apricot, They all started to kick Sorrow while he was down, the Covey kids wanting Sorrow's death to be slow and painful. As Sorrow almost blacks out, Bonnie from 8 and Lace from 8 tackled the Covey away from Sorrow, letting Sorrow crawl away from the cornucopia with his pickaxe. Sorrow would eventually catch his breath and stand up to walk over to the roller coaster he had seen. Unbeknownst to him, the roller coaster just so happens to be where Chala from 9, Barlon from 9, Adelaide from 14, Connor from 14, Yasmin from 15, Thomas from 15, and Vincent from 15 were also hiding out. As Sorrow roamed the station of the roller coaster, he'd look past Chala, Barlon, Adelaide, Connor, Yasmin, Thomas, and Vincent multiple times. Eventually, the 9s and the European tributes would strike first. As Sorrow looked past the tributes for the 5th time, instead distracted by the view of the amusement park around him, Barlon, Connor, Thomas, and Vincent jumped out of hiding. When Sorrow saw the group of boys, he looked fearful, until he heard a roller coaster car approaching. Sorrow would get onto the roller coaster right in the nick of time. Barlon would get in the next car, while Connor, Thomas, and Vincent would get on the next train of cars. Barlon would try to get to the roller coaster car that Sorrow was on, sword in hand. This would cause an intense battle to occur on the roller coaster car. Sorrow would eventually push Barlon off the roller coaster car, grabbing Barlon's sword as he fell to his death. He then threw Barlon's sword at the tracks before jumping off of the roller coaster. The roller coaster would derail, killing Chala, Adelaide, and Yasmin. Meanwhile, the roller coaster train that Connor, Thomas, and Vincent were on crashed into the back of the other train, blowing up the train and killing Connor, Thomas, and Vincent. As the days continued, all Sorrow could think about was Lisbeth's offer to adopt him if he had made it out. This would give him a certain drive that he needed to win. On the dawn of the 3rd day, it was down to the top 5. The top 5 consisted of Ruby from 1, Ophelia from 2, Sally Mahogany from 12, Sydney Apricot from 12, and Sorrow from 12. As the top 5 realized this, the rides began to collapse around them. Since the careers were already at the cornucopia, they were safe, already beginning to fight, thinking Sorrow wouldn't make it to the cornucopia before being killed by the event. As Sorrow ran, explosions and collapsing rides would stress Sorrow out. He'd run faster, desperate to beat the event to the cornucopia. As he continued to run, he'd hear the cannons of the fighting careers. As Sorrow arrived at the cornucopia, he'd see Ruby stabbing Ophelia in the foot and twisting the knife. This would mean that Sorrow only had to face up against Ruby in order to win. Just then, Ruby throws a knife at Sorrow's leg. As Sorrow fell to the ground in pain, Ruby ran at him and pinned him down. Sorrow would glare at Ruby with intense anger and hatred. Before Ruby could finish off Sorrow, a barely conscious Ophelia threw a knife into the side of Ruby's skull. As Ruby fell off of Sorrow, barely clinging to the last threads of her life, Ophelia muttered, "Happy birthday, bitch," before both Ophelia and Ruby died simultaneously, marking Sorrow's victory. After the games, Sorrow would stay in the capital, being plagued by the nightmares and hallucinations. Although Capitolites loved him, he wouldn't get over what he had done in the arena. He would, however, join the band with Cuth Larson, victor of the 232nd Hunger Games, and Hermes Pacelli, victor of the 237th Hunger Games, and a future victor who had been one of the founding members of the band. Lisbeth would pull through on her promise, adopting Sorrow and officially moving to the capital in order to allow Sorrow to stay in the capital as he wished. Lisbeth Diggs and Sorrow Summers Diggs would be amazing mentors for District 12, until, of course, they'd mentor victors of their genders to replace them. Sorrow would eventually meet a girl named Tinsley Bancroft when he was 19 and Tinsley was 21. He'd meet Tinsley through the band formed with some of his fellow victors. Tinsley would be impressed with Sorrow's voice, and the pair would get along great, with Sorrow teaching Tinsley how to sing. Eventually, the pair would start dating. The pair would end up having 5 kids together, 2 girls and 3 boys, none of which going on to compete in the Hunger Games. Meanwhile, the amusement park in the arena that would be rebuilt to its former glory, only the not-so-popular rides being destroyed during the arena event. Meanwhile, the destruction of the roller coaster caused by Sorrow, the Nines, and the European tributes was easy to repair. The 239th Games took place in the year 303. Much like Hermes 2 years ago, this year's victor would also have a birthday within the arena, along with this year's female tribute from District 2. This year, Districts 2 and 5 were picked to send in the extra female tributes, and Districts 3 and 4 were picked to send in the extra male tributes. Here are all of the mentors for the 239th Games. Pause and read at your own discretion. As I mentioned, this victor also has a birthday within the arena. His age is 17 in the written where it says, like, oh yeah, this year's victor is this person, this age, this district. Yeah, that just means he was 17 when he won. He turned 17 in the arena. He was reaped at 16, turned 17 in the arena. Anyways, let's get into it. This year's games took place at Paradise Falls. The weather was slightly cloudy. The main event was a rock slide / flood. The games lasted for 4 days, and the notable mutts were Stalker Storks. This year's victor was 17-year-old Faraday Sanderson of District 3. Faraday was well known in District 3 for his immense intelligence. He'd invent many technological items that the capital uses today. He started his career inventing a solar-powered cell phone when he was 7. Faraday would come out as gay during the tribute interview, which would earn him many sponsors this year. When the tributes rose into the arena, Faraday immediately recognized the place from the studies of the old world. He'd also remember how tall the surrounding waterfalls were. Faraday would look for his ally and crush, Vector. Once Faraday found Vector, he'd give Vector a reassuring smile, waving at Vector. Vector would wave back nervously, not thinking he would do too great in the games. When the gong sounded, Faraday would grab a backpack from the outskirts of the cornucopia before grabbing Vector by the hand and running away from the cornucopia with him. Faraday would only kill Brayden from 8, who was in his way. This year, the career pack would be killed relatively early, considering the outlier pack was huge this year. The deaths of the career pack and Tinder from 3 would cause many Capitalites to tune out from the games due to most of the Capital favorites being dead, although many Capitalites still watching to see how Faraday would do. As the days went on, Faraday and Vector would use the entire arena to their advantage. Faraday and Vector would tie metal wire around one of the podium mines, using this as a weapon. Faraday would swing the mine over his head like a lasso before flinging the mine at unsuspecting tributes, killing them on impact. He'd kill Sol from 5, Ford from 6, Carolina from 6, Maisie from 9, and Mercia from 14 this way. On the dawn of the fourth day, it was down to the top 10. The top 10 consisted of Faraday from 3, Vector from 3, Joanne from 5, Helio from 5, Azula from 8, Scythe from 9, Ivory from 11, Jay from 11, Richard from 14, and Sabrina from 15. As the tributes realized this, a rock slide was triggered by the game makers. This arena event was only supposed to bring the tributes up to the cornucopia, but the intensity was majorly miscalculated, some rocks bursting a dam nearby and causing a major flood. As the water rushed towards Faraday and Vector, the pair hugged and kissed each other before the water hit them with full force. Both boys would be held underwater for way too long than anyone could normally survive, but eventually Faraday would come up out of the water. As Faraday came up out of the water, the cannon of Richard went off, as the last tribute drowned. Faraday would be confused for a second, having been unable to hear the other cannons. Eventually, Faraday's victory would be announced, to the surprise of Faraday and the game makers who made the announcement. After the games, Faraday stayed in the capital, forming a band with fellow victors who stayed in the capital. Cuth Larson, victor of the 232nd Hunger Games, Hermes Bocelli, victor of the 237th Hunger Games, and Sorrow Summers, victor of the 238th Hunger Games. Faraday would be the lead singer, Cuth would be the drummer, Hermes would be the bassist, and Sorrow would be the rhythm guitarist. The band would be called Mixed Signals. This band of victors would come onto the interview stage to perform before the interviews began every year after the band's inception before the 240th Games. Other than the band, Faraday would find love in the capital, falling for a boy by the name of Cinna, who happens to be a stylist of District 12. Yep, another stylist of District 12 named Cinna, although this one was a lot less rebellious than the stylist who did up Katniss and Peeta way back when. Faraday and Cinna would end up dating during the 241st Hunger Games, officially getting married during the 245th Hunger Games. The pair would end up adopting 5 kids together, 2 girls and 3 boys, before divorcing during the 250th Hunger Games. Faraday would spend the rest of his life single, focusing on his own self-love instead of getting love from someone else. The 240th Games took place in the year 304. For the 240th Games, as this was the 33rd quinquennial quell, President Belladonna Caliban made a live appearance on Capitol TV. After applause in Snow Square, President Caliban bowed and announced that in order to remind the districts of the resulting food shortage of the rebellions of the past, there is no food available in the arena, only weapons. This year's games saw a record number of victors' descendants in the arena. These tributes would include both tributes from 1, the boy from 2, the girl from 3, both tributes from 4, both tributes from 6, the girl from 7, the boy from 9, the boy from 10, both tributes from 11, both tributes from 12, and both tributes from 15. Here are all of the mentors for the 240th Hunger Games. Pause and read at your own discretion. This year's games took place in Antelope Canyon. The weather was sunny. The main event was an antelope stampede. The games lasted for 6 days, and the notable mutts were agitated antelopes. This year's victor was 18-year-old Gaston Delacroix from District 15. Gaston and his little sister Sonia, aged 14, were reaped for District 15 this year. The pair were great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren of Léo Desjardins, victor of the 111th Hunger Games. When Gaston and Sonia were reaped, they had high hopes for victory, as both of them had adequate training in surviving extended periods of time without eating. When the tributes rose into the arena, Gaston and Sonia immediately looked around for each other. When they found each other, Gaston gave Sonia a reassuring nod before the gong sounded. When the gong sounded, Gaston and Sonia met up with each other before running away from the cornucopia. Meanwhile, most of the other tributes ran into the cornucopia, making for a massive bloodbath, while the careers had a field day, taking out most of the outliers in the competition. Gaston and Sonia had eaten a lot before the games, knowing that there would be no food in the arena. It was also mentioned that sponsoring food and water was not allowed either, so the careers couldn't get food or water from sponsors either. When Gaston and Sonia got far enough away from the cornucopia, they hide behind a wall in the gorge and start talking about their home lives. This is more directed to the capitalites watching, considering Gaston and Sonia are siblings. As the games went on, the remaining outliers were hidden away from the careers hunted. While the careers hunted, the careers would still manage to hunt down and kill Solaris from 5, being unable to find any more tributes on the second day. Since there was only one death on the second day, the game makers announced a feast at the cornucopia that would be held on the third day, although food and water would still not be available for the tributes. Instead, the only things available during the feast were weapons, supplies, and memoirs from the tributes' families. After this announcement was made, Gaston and Sonia would talk to each other about whether or not they should go. Gaston and Sonia were still pretty energetic and strong, considering they had eaten before the games, filling themselves up for the games so they'd have more calories to burn. Gaston and Sonia would eventually decide to try out the feast. They would hide behind a nearby rock to the cornucopia entrance. They'd only run into the cornucopia once the coast was clear. The next day, as Gaston and Sonia waited at the entrance of the cornucopia cave, all seemed well, until Marjorie, from 14, tried sneaking up on the pair. All 3 remaining outlier tributes were unarmed, but Marjorie wouldn't let that stop her. When she got close enough to the pair from District 15, Marjorie would snap Sonia's neck, sounding her cannon. As Gaston jolted around and saw Marjorie, Marjorie just laughed, stating that killing Sonia was too easy. Gaston would glare at Marjorie, entering into an intense hand-to-hand combat with the girl. Meanwhile, the careers were already turning on each other. During training this year, it was evident that the careers weren't getting along. 2 different teams started to emerge from the careers during training. One composed of Districts 1 and 2, who thought it'd be better to train at weapons. The other composed of Districts 4, 7, 10, and 12, who thought it'd be better to focus on fasting so they'd be able to last longer without food. The two career teams would turn on each other during the feast. Of course, since the fasting team had more tributes and all of the tributes on that team had still been pretty strong, whilst Dia from 1, Monty from 1, Olivia from 2, and Orion from 2 had great muscle fatigue already, the fasting team had won the fight, killing off the 1s and 2s. Gaston would run at Marjorie after she had killed Gaston's sister. Gaston would tackle Marjorie to the ground, punching her in the face repeatedly until her cannon sounded and her body was unrecognizable. After Gaston killed Marjorie, he looked back at the cornucopia, noticing it was empty at this point. Gaston was easily able to get to the cornucopia and grab his feast bag before running away, back to his hiding spot. At midnight during night 6, leading into the 7th day, it was down to the top 5. The top 5 consisted of Seal from 4, Diego from 10, Addison from 12, Richmond from 12, and Gaston from 15. Out of the 5 remaining tributes, Addison, Richmond, and Gaston were still amongst the strongest of the remaining tributes. As Gaston was trying to sleep, he heard a sound nearby. The sound would grow louder and closer. Gaston would get up, having a feeling he knew what was happening. As Gaston began to run, he saw a group of stampeding antelopes running towards him. This would make Gaston run even faster. As Gaston ran, he heard the cannon of Seal, leaving just him, Diego, and the 12s. Once Gaston arrived at the cornucopia, Gaston watched as Richmond killed Addison. Richmond would then look in Gaston's direction and laugh, although it sounded more like Richmond was compensating for something. Although Gaston and Richmond hadn't eaten for a week, Gaston still hadn't reached the point of muscle fatigue, while Richmond was just starting to experience muscle fatigue. Gaston would run at Richmond, tackling him to the ground and pushing him over the edge of the cornucopia roof, letting the antelopes deal with Richmond. This is when Diego struck. With what little strength he had left, Diego, the son of Mateo Gutierrez, victor of the 208th Hunger Games, punched Gaston in the face, causing Gaston to stumble a little, now also feeling the effects of muscle fatigue. The rest of the fight was long and painful to watch as Diego and Gaston daftly swung at each other, barely causing any damage to each other. Victors and other viewers would actively cringe while watching this fight. Even their mentors, 49-year-old Mateo Gutierrez and 30-year-old Yasmin Tobin, would just hope that the other tribute would put their mentee out of their misery. Eventually, Diego would collapse first. As Diego collapsed, Gaston approached Diego with laboring breath. Diego would look up at Gaston and give him a nod, signaling to Gaston to put him out of his misery, unable to speak and say it himself. Gaston would nod in understanding and, at this, pushing Diego over the edge of the roof of the cornucopia, letting the antelopes deal with Diego as well. Unlike Richmond, however, Gaston felt bad for Diego and would pick up one of Richmond's remaining knives and throw it into Diego's head, sounding his cannon and marking Gaston's victory. Gaston would then pass out as peacekeepers came to collect him. After the games, Gaston returned home to District 15, where he would eat the largest meal of his life as soon as he got home. Yasmin would giggle, also eating with Gaston, stating that Gaston must have missed the food. to which Gaston would reply by asking, "Who wouldn't?" After a few years, Gaston would find love with a gorgeous Spanish girl named Gabriella. Gabriella Gabriella's mother was French, while her father was Spanish. She'd be living in France when Panem took it back over as District 15. Gaston and Gabriella would eventually get married, having a large family of 15 with each other, 13 girls and 2 boys. Surprisingly, none of these children would compete in future games, although future descendants of Gaston would compete in future games, with some even winning. So yeah, guys, that is the end of the 231st through 240th Hunger Games. Sorry it took so long to come out. A lot of writer's block and other experiences happened, but I'm glad it has finally come out. This time around, I don't just have victory posters for you. I mean, that's what I have. I have 11 posters that will be shown after this, because not only do I have Victory Tour posters, but I also have a little bit of a creative poster that I made for the band with Cuth, Hermes, Sorrow, and Faraday called Mixed Signals. I kind of made a little bit of a poster for that, so I'll also be showing that. It'll be like the very last slide. So anyways, yeah guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And I wanna start asking you guys this question, but who was your favorite victor out of the 10 that we went over in this episode? So Keiko, Cuth, Lisbeth, Evangeline, Cheyenne, Cornelia, Hermes, Sorrow, Faraday, and Gaston. Who was your favorite victor out of those 10? Comment in the comment section below. Let's have some friendly debate if you want to do that. Let's have some friendly debate, mention your favorite, and then, just present reasonings, I suppose, as to why it's your favorite. And we can start a little friendly debate if you wish. But anyways, I'm so glad this episode has finally come out. It was a long time in the works, a long time in the waiting, but it's finally here. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, then be sure to slap the like button. As always, stay awesome. Bye, people.